Hey everybody, welcome to Do You Believe on Paranormal Zone TV. Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining me tonight. Don't forget, after the show or during the show, if you would please give my show a like, I'd appreciate it. And for all those who may be joining us for the first time, welcome to the show. You are watching a live broadcast. And if you would please subscribe to my channel, I would appreciate that as well. Also, thank you so much. Everybody, I hope you enjoy the show tonight. My guest is Von Braschler. He is an author. He's written many books. He's also been on Coast to Coast. And tonight, the book we're going to be discussing and the information that's in it and his experiences are Confessions of a Reluctant Ghost Hunter, a cautionary tale of encounters with malevolent entities and other disembodied spirits. So everyone, please, let's give a welcome to Von Braschler. Thanks so much for joining me tonight.
Thanks, Doreen. Thank you for having me on the show. It's great.
Oh my gosh! I saw you. I've listened to some of your interviews. I saw you on another show, Dr. Rita Louise, and I thought, oh my God, I want you on my show. So
none of it's true. None of it's true.
So let's talk about your book and what happened to you? What happened for you to write this book? What happened to you?
It was, I guess, what you call catharsis. I never intended to write this book. I basically write in the area of consciousness and time and things like that. Dreams, working with your pet. It's all consciousness and time. So healing. So this is something that happened to me. It just actually happened to me. And it's nothing that, I was happy about. It's nothing I wanted to talk about. It's nothing I wanted to think about. It's nothing I wanted to continue in my life. It was something that just happened to me. And I had some very bad experiences when I was trained and attempted some very difficult haunting removals. And I found out that not every haunting is simple. They're all different. I found out that hauntings are not always just Aunt Ruth who just hangs around because she misses everybody, or Uncle Fred who's too ornery to leave, or the dog that can't be parted. Mm-hmm. There are things out there that I would call non-human in that they've never lived before. I think there's a lot of different spirits out there that haunt buildings and people and attach themselves to buildings and people that are not of this world and never have been.
Right. Now, why did you get involved in the paranormal?
Well, the paranormal, a lot of us just get stuck with it when we're born. When I was like 6 years old in the first grade, and there's only one person that can verify my story because we've been friends all this time, the teacher asked us all to stand up and say where we're from. And I guess the idea was that you'd say what part of town, or if you'd moved to town, or if you'd come from across the country, you would say that. And I got up and she called on me because I was always just kind of like a daydreamer back then. It probably haven't changed. And she said, Vaughn, stand up. Yeah. Where are you from? And without batting an eye or thinking, I said, Venus. She said, that's not funny, sit down. And afterwards I said to my best friend, I said, did I say something wrong? And he said, when she asked you where you were from, you said you were from Venus. I said, that's weird. I said, but it sounds right, doesn't it? So I think a lot of us, gosh, my son, bless his heart, he doesn't like to get into all this that I do, but because he's a respectable lawyer now. But I know that he had some incredible experiences. So I would say that some of us are just born with psychic insight. Or insight might be the wrong word. It's just that you have a sensitivity to things.
Do you have psychic abilities?
I have some, and I've always been able to, very often been able to see, sense, or hear ghosts, or hauntings, or spirits that were there, and I didn't know what to do with them. I had no idea what to do with them. And then I met up with the ghost hunter that says, I can tell you what to do with them. You can help a lot of people. And then I reluctantly got into it, just helping friends, mind you. I had some very, very difficult encounters. And now, I will tell you this, that for many, many years I blocked out these things. There's nothing I wanted to talk about. But they say that a real writer digs deep inside and exposes everything. And lays yourself naked in front of the world. Well, horrible thought in my case, but in this case, I just had to, because it was just something that was just gnawing at me, and I felt bad about what happened to the people I tried to help, and did not adequately help or sufficiently help. We're talking death, decapitations.
Wait a minute. What do you mean you're talking death and decapitations?
Well, gosh, yeah. So I grew up in the Seattle area, and I saw a lot of ghosts in houses where I lived, and places I would go. I would see ghosts, and they were mostly like people who had died and just hung out, and I didn't think a big thing about it. So. I like to say my first teacher, informally, was the psychic author Louis Gittner of Marcus Island, East Sound, Washington. And I discovered this man. He was the real deal. If you could find him, he would answer any question you wanted. And, he didn't charge for his time. He didn't do classes. He was very, very gifted. And he was like Edgar Cayce, a sleeping prophet. And he had great insight. Great knowledge. And one day when I went to see him, he didn't come out. Instead, he said a woman named Helen. And Helen described herself as his secretary. And she said, but I also de-ghost houses. I said, say what? I de-ghost houses. I said, well, you removed the ghost? She said, that's what I tried to do. She said, I think maybe Louis wanted me to talk to you about that.
I've never heard that expression before, de-ghost.
She used that expression, I de-ghost houses. And she said, I go out and when people report a haunting, sometimes it is haunted, sometimes it isn't. It isn't always what they think. But I can usually, if it's just someone who's passed on, is reluctant or stubborn or afraid to move on, I help them fully, move on. And she said, I could tell you about that. I think maybe Louis wanted you to know about that. Whether or not this interests you or something, knowledge you need to know or would just find mildly interesting, you'll have to tell me. And I said, well, sure. They had the best coffee at his inn. I'll give a plug for the Outlook Inn. And he runs this like an innkeeper. He doesn't mind me saying that. He's an innkeeper. But, it's a little bit like the river boatman in the story Siddhartha, He finds people by running the inn, and he helps them. But anyway, so she tells me about this, and then we talk most of a day, And then she says, now, if this really interests you, you can come back tomorrow, and we'll really get into it. She said, only if it interests you, and I'm not encouraging you to have any follow-up interest. And I said, well, yeah, sure. So I come back the next day, and I take notes and everything. I'm a journalist by training, so I do everything by notes. I have the 20 questions. She said, put away your notepad. There's just nothing to write down. She said, I'll just tell you how it is. And she's very experiential. This is how she does it. She goes in, she sits with the ghost. Well, first of all, she tries to establish contact. She does this by asking everyone in the home to leave, to get out of the house, so it's just her and the spirit. And then she tries to zero in on it. She calls that making contact. And then when she finds that she's very close, she will sit down next to it, and then she'll try to communicate. This is telepathically. She's not shouting at it like you see on TV, people following ghosts with cameras, harassing ghosts. I call that ghost stalking.
Does she use a digital recorder did she use a digital recorder at all?
No.
No.
No. So the technique that I was trained in is often criticized by people who find it just an absolutely fun and exciting scientific, shall we say, pseudoscientific sport to chase ghosts and record them. But what I found talking with Helen, and I find this to be very true, is that the ghosts will appear, or spirits will appear, to whoever they want to appear to. And they'll not appear to everyone. And it has a little to do with whether you're sensitive enough to pick up on them, but not entirely. They can appear in front of you and then disappear and then reappear. It's like a little game.
Mm-hmm.
They're just moving in. They're interdimensional beings at this point. If they're deceased people, part of their body has not fully moved on, and so they're just sitting there, locked in time and space, going through this reoccurring day scene in this place, and it's pretty awful. So anyway, Helen would try to communicate with them telepathically. She's a true psychic, gifted, empath, and she would sit and communicate with them. Then she would assure them telepathically that, there's nothing to be afraid of. It's very easy. It's very natural. All they have to do is go forward. There's nothing she needs to tell them other than it's safe and now is the time and they need to go.
Were you with her when she was doing this?
No, I was not with her when she was doing that, but she described many of her encounters, and there was a pattern to it. And her pattern was typically, I suppose this is her karma, different from mine or different from yours. Helen's karma was that she was always getting called in to houses where there really was a deceased person that she could help move on. And she was really, really good at it. She said they would be sitting there, with their handbag and their hat, or their cane and their coat folded over their lap, a little reluctant or afraid or uncertain how to go or if they should even try. And she would just assure them that it's just the easiest thing in the world. Now's the time to go. There's nothing for them here. This is the land of the living. They need to move on. They need to evolve spiritually and move on. Mm-hmm. And they would. And she said, well, now, Vaughn, not every haunting is like that. I said, what do you mean? She says, well, she told me a couple of different examples. One was if people would sense a ghost, but it wasn't really a ghost. They were paranoid, or they were hearing creaking houses, or people were playing tricks on them, or sometimes there was really nothing there.
Mm-hmm.
And then she said, and then there are the cases of what she called it, and this will be familiar to a lot of your fans. She called it the case of the being that's created out of negative emotions that have spilled over by the occupants of that building, that home, or whatever. And these would be people who have had argument, a lot of negative emotions, and these emotions have nowhere to go. We must remember, especially in talking about spirits, is that thought forms do have form. So your thoughts do create form. Your thoughts do take form. Your thoughts do glom onto other forms. They attach to things. And in time, there would be like a dark, shadowy figure in a corner that would resemble the only thing it could resemble its creators. It would take the shape of a person, and it would be dark, and it would become more and more defined as they would continue to feed it with their negative emotions. And she said, now, there's very little I can do with these people other than to begin to stop feeding it so that it dissolves. And but to absolutely remove it is often difficult, and it's something that they've created. And so
what did you start doing? She trained you?
What did I start doing? Yeah. Well, so I didn't see any of these wonderful people that Helen had talked about, unfortunately. She said, I said, is there anything else I should look out for? And she said, well, not really. It's like, I don't want to tell you, kid, but there's a crazy world out there. She said, oh, no, not really. And so she said, it's up to you if you want to do it, She said, maybe your friends, maybe your neighbors will need it, And so, I'm in Anacortes, Washington, and I'm visiting her on Orcas Island in the San Juans, and still have a boat out there. I love it out there. And so I then started working for a newspaper in Oregon, a mountain paper on Mount Hood. I'm the publisher of this mountain paper on Mount Hood, Oregon. And so I have all these strange stories that people are starting to tell me. Well, the woods are kind of enchanted, But the first one is like a church. It's a big brick church. It's like 100 years old.
Are you going to start talking about the one about the Native American herbalist?
The Native American herbalist. That's the one that causes me to still to lose sleep. Because their lives were ruined.
Let's talk about that.
Native American herbalist because I when I was working for the paper, she came by and she wanted to know if anybody would be interested in an herbal walk. And I said, well, I would be. And I did it. And then she did one for my son. And then her daughter...
Well, that was out... Okay, so where was this? In Mount Hood, in the forest?
Mount Hood, yeah. She lived on Mount Hood, in Mount Hood National Forest.
And didn't they live...
She lived in a trailer with her husband and her daughter. Her daughter was about 15 at the time, maybe 16. And they lived in this mobile home. It was a single-wide, like 40-some foot mobile home. And the man who owned it, I never met him, but it was described to me that he was unable to sell the place, lease it, or rent it. And as a consequence, he asked them to move in rent-free to be caretakers and see that it wasn't demolished and run down. There were a lot of strange things about the trailer. There were names of, dates carved on trees. There were signs that people had left hurriedly, And so one day after I'd known them a while, the herbalist lady, she said, I think our trailer might be haunted. And I'd mentioned to her that I'd done a couple things in the area, helping, find, looking for haunted buildings. And she said, is that something you could check out for me? I said, well, I have had some training. I said, I don't know how helpful I would be. I would be very happy to help you if I can. I said, what makes you think it's haunted? She said, well, when we go to sleep at night, my husband and I, in the back bedroom, back into the trailer, we feel we'll start to sleep, and then there'll be like choking that goes around the throat. Usually it's her husband, and sometimes her. And there's this choking, and then we wake up, and there's nobody there. And I said, well, is there anything else? I said, what about your daughter? Does it bother your daughter? She said, well, that's the other odd thing. Now, our daughter has an entirely different story. She claims she has this invisible playmate that sits on her bed and helps her sketch in the book when she draws the herbs.
And she has what, like little blonde curls?
Little blonde curls. Well, no, the girl doesn't, but she describes the little invisible girl as having a little girl with blonde curls.
Right.
Describes her as being, as best I could understand it, about 8 or 9, younger than she was. And her little friend would sit there, and so she said, well, talk to her. And I said, yeah, I'll talk to her, but I want to talk to you. I said, I have an idea. I was thinking like the girl's projecting something, like she doesn't, So anyways, my theory going in was she has an imaginary playmate. The girl is very imaginative. She's probably, sending the negative vibes, which is causing them to feel choked during the night. It's all because this girl has an active imagination. So I go and talk to the little girl, and she said, oh, yes, she's my special friend. And she said, and my parents can't see her. She said, but she's really a good friend. I said, well, tell me about her. She said, well, she doesn't like my parents at all. I don't think she likes adults. She just likes children. She doesn't like dogs either. She doesn't like my dog. I got to thinking about all those dog names that were carved on the tree with different dates. But I thought, that's just a weird coincidence.
So the tree outside of this trailer had dog names carved in it and dates.
With dates,
with dates.
Like one date, it would be like, December 22nd in the year. It's like spot. They were just dog names. And I thought, weird. So, but who knows what that means? So anyway, so I'm talking to her, and she said, well, she could be your friend too. She said, I will tell her about you, and then you could come in here and you could sit on the bed and you could say that I sent you, and you want to talk to her, and you can write in the coloring book together. Now, this is the weird thing, is that this girl actually had drawn in the coloring book, according to my little friend. She had actually drawn the coloring book, and later on I saw some of the drawings that were really, really frightful.
The ghost girl drew?
Yep. According to the daughter, yes. And,
but you never saw them. But you never saw them.
Well, I said, I tell you what I'll do. I said, according to my training by Helen, I said, I want you to all get out of the trailer. You can sit on the front porch or be in the front yard if you like. And it was summertime, so they had like a little campfire out front, and they'd smoke their herbs, and So they said, yeah. So I go in there alone, and I wander around, and something feels a little strange there, but I can't find anything. And I learned something. They can hide. They can be seen or not seen. They can make you hear what you want to hear, what they want you to hear. They can appear in a way they want to appear.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's all like thought transfer.
Right.
It's not like the spirit world has feet to make footprints or footfall. Make the sound of feet walking across the wall. It's not like they have a voice to scream. They have no larynx. So, when everyone tells me, why don't you use recording equipment? It's just like, what am I going to record? They're spirits. So anyway, here's the thing. So I walk around, and I try very different ways, and finally I go out and get a big flashlight from the husband, and I'm walking around, and that's just creeping me out. So then I just turn off the lights, and I'm walking around, and I'm walking. You walk through this narrow trailer, and they had a washer and a dryer in the middle of this trailer. There would be the large room when you come in, which is where the daughter's bed was, and the entry and the kitchen. And then there would be this narrow hallway leading back to the back bedroom where mother and stepfather would sleep. In the middle, there was this narrow hallway, a very small trailer. And in the hallway, in this narrow trailer, was a washer-dryer pressed against one wall. So I'm walking, feeling my way in the dark, and I'm feeling up to the dryer, metal, and then I reach up, and something's there, and I look up, and, oh my gosh, this is some hideous thing. It's dark. It's it has dark red brooding eyes, a sneer. It's very angular. It's not human. And I'm just shocked. And even though I'd been trained to try to communicate with spirits telepathically by Helen, I couldn't help saying something. And all I could blurt out was, "You're no little girl with golden curls." And it looked at me, and it smiled this nasty smile, and then it transformed itself into a little girl with golden curls.
Oh.
Well, I couldn't take it. I ran out of the trailer. And they said, they're waiting out there. They said, "Did you find anything? Did you find anything?" And I said, "Yeah, I think I found something." They said, "Good, can you get it out?" I said, "That might be difficult." So I go back in, and I had all these little tools that Helen had taught me to bring. Various, she calls it the tricks of the trade. There would be a little box, in the magic box, you'd have your tools, you'd have your salt, and you have your stakes, and you'd have your water and to throw at it, and then she said, "Bring a mirror." She always said, "Bring a mirror." And I said, "I don't know anything about how to use mirrors." She says, "You've never been trained in anything to do with mirror magic?" And I said, "No." She said, "That's a shame. That's a shame," she kept saying. So I brought the mirror, and by golly, at the last minute, I figured it out. and it was in the living room, and I'm sitting on the bed, I'm coaxing it, saying, come sit with me, and show me the work you did with the girl in the book. And I bring out the book, and I'm flipping through the pages, and I feel this thing in the room. It's just really nasty. It's just, I don't know how to describe it. It's not like cold, but it was like clammy and eerie and heavy in the room. And so I got this idea, and I propped the mirror up, and I flashed light on the mirror. Well, first of all, I did this little cat thing where you make a little shadow, with the light, little dancing light all over the room. And I said, follow the light. Can you follow the light?
So you were communicating with this entity?
Yeah, I was communicating
now,
with it.
Okay, so while you were communicating with this entity, were you getting responses back, telepathy?
Nothing. It was just menacing and angry. I would say it was pissed off. That was the feeling I was getting all the way.
So it wasn't responding to you?
No. It was kind of like, go away, I hate you, go away, I hate you. That was kind of it. And, but I'd been warned by the girl that the girl with the golden curls did not like adults, did not like men. So, anyway, I'm playing with the mirror and the flashlight. Finally, I take the flashlight and I do a little dance with the light on the floor up to the mirror, and I shine it straight on the mirror. And I said, I can see myself in the mirror because I have form. I said, you have no form. You're not of this world. You do not belong in this world. I said, would you like me to show you how to be in this world and have form? I said, put yourself in the mirror. And I felt that it was going into the mirror. And I opened the door, threw the mirror on the porch on the front, slammed the door closed, stomped on the mirror, broke it into a lot of pieces. And they said, did you get it out? Did you get it out? I said, I think so. And then I tried to go home. I got halfway down the hill in my little red car, and I started feeling choking on my neck. And then, it was really bad. I couldn't steer, and I had to stop the car. Then the car wouldn't start. And then everything started working strange on the car. Like the lights and the windshield wipers and everything was going berserk. And it wouldn't start. And so I said, I probably couldn't make it down the hill anyway. It would strangle me. So I thought, what are my choices? So I did this is why I call it Confessions of a Reluctant Ghost Hunter. I drove back with the ghost, or the spirit, in the car, and I went back, knocked on the door, and they opened the door, and they said, why are you back? And I said, I couldn't get rid of it. It followed me. They said, well, you didn't bring it back, did you? I said, I don't know. I said, I think we can keep it out of the building. So my thought was that we could keep it in the woods, and so I staked out the building. I've been trained to call in the 4 cardinal points, the 4 archetypes, the 4 watchtowers, whatever you want to call it, and stake, and I've been taught to do a continuous line of salt, kosher salt, and then to invoke the watchtowers to guard the house and order it off the property. And I said the house is sealed. I didn't have a lot of confidence because that's how you would treat a ghost that you want to get rid of. That's how you would treat a ghost after it was out of the house that you didn't want in the house. And I had no idea that it was back in the house. She did open the door. I had no idea that this would work because I didn't think I was dealing with a deceased person, ghost, but some other spirit. So I went home and I wondered if it was going to work. And I figured the next time I would see them, I would hear whether it had made more appearance in the house or whether these appearances would have ended.
Now, I also heard you talk on a radio show about the chapel. What was living in that chapel in the woods?
The chapel in the woods was occupied by women, older women who they did kind of like, it was a healing circle. And we sent a had all these, like the disappearance of this neighbor girl. She disappeared, and then her sister, who was one of my neighbors, got a call from her saying, help me, you've got to help me. And then the phone, she was not on then no more message on the phone, just that. I would call that a ghostly, what do you call it?
Calls from the dead.
Calls from the dead, yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of those. I mean, I've had them myself. They're creepy, but, Anyway, so she said, she came to me and she said, I know my sister's alive. I said, do you think she's alive? She said, I hope she's alive. But I haven't seen her in months. And the last thing she came up here, and she was up there trying to find her sister and staying with a friend. And she said, well, she came up here and she was trying to find herself on the mountain. And, the mountain is very enchanted. There's a lot of things that the Native Americans would
now you're
have
talking about
ceremonies up there.
You're talking about Mount Hood.
Yeah.
Yeah, Now where's Mount Hood? Is that in Washington?
Yeah, it's right across the Columbia River from Mount St. Helens.
Oh.
It rumbles too, but so far it hasn't made the big kabooey. But the Warm Spring Indian tribe up there has for years wintered in the area where we're talking about. The area where the chapel was located was near my home on the mountain, and it was in an unincorporated area called Sleepy Hollow.
Oh, no kidding.
No kidding. And, a lot of interesting people lived in Sleepy Hollow. Clint Eastwood had a house up there, but all he did was, polish his old Cadillac.
Oh,
time.
God.
But these gals, they had this old kind of like wooden chapel in the woods. It was kind of like a log cabin kind of thing, as best I can recall. And, there would be like herbs hanging from the front door, and, there'd be like crystals and a little rainbow, things on the door. And they seemed like sweet little ladies. And so I went up there and asked if they knew anything about the girl.
Mm-hmm.
And they were very reluctant to talk about it. They said, we don't know anything about that. I said, this was her name, and this is the way she looked, this is how old she was. She was young, and she was just up here trying to, spend the summer, and she was up from Portland, Oregon, and trying to find herself, and she wanted to, back to woods, back to nature experience, and her sister said that, one of the last times she heard from her, she went to your chapel in the woods for a healing. She says, we do healings here, but I don't remember the girl. So, right shortly after that, we started having decapitations of birds, and then we had a decapitation of a girl in a lake. And it was a young girl. We took a long time to figure out that it was even a girl because there was no head, and it was all decomposed. She'd been dead a long time, and all the blood had been removed. And all I know is that they found that right after they found the decapitation of the birds. I mean, by that I mean like large birds that were like rung up a flagpole at the local school in the summertime.
Oh my God.
Which was very embarrassing to everybody. But I think it should have been alarming more than embarrassing. Anyway, it was hard to get any information because they couldn't do any identification on the girl. It was so decomposed. But so then they went to dental records, and they found it was a young girl. And we found out that her sister had died. And the funny thing, not funny at all, pathetic thing, is that she got the phone call after the girl would have died, according to the coroner's report.
So, from the time she got the phone call and her body was discovered, what was the length of time?
As best I can remember, it was like just short of 2 weeks.
Oh, wow, that fast.
Well, yeah, she'd been in the lake sometime, and then she got the call. So she got the call from a dead woman, basically.
Oh, my sister has too. So,
yeah.
And they're really strange phone calls when you get them.
Yeah.
So, did they ever discover who was doing the bird decapitation?
No. There was never a connection. There was never There was never, I told the sheriff's department in Clark-Hills County what I knew, which wasn't much, and they went out and they interviewed the nice ladies, the chapel in the hill, and they had no evidence of anything, so I don't want to say anything bad about those ladies, but...
Well, what did those...
part of it.
What do those ladies do? What are they involved in?
Well, we sent out a reporter to see what it was like to get a healing from them, and he came back and he said, I'm not writing about it, I'm not talking about it, and I'm not going back. I said, come on. He said, he didn't want to talk about it. I said, well, at least tell me, just privately, tell me what happened. He said, well, they started jumping up and down on me with their hands, and then jumping up and down on me and chanting, and it was really, really weird.
Sound like
shouting
witches.
And chanting, and it was painful, it was awful. And I jumped up and I said, thanks, but no thanks, and I ran out. I didn't say boo, I just ran out. Never going back.
Were they witches?
I don't know what they were.
They sound, that's either Wiccan or witches, that's what it sounds like.
It could be.
Okay, so...
When they came to town, they donated money to charitable causes. But I also know that they've had a huge purple bubble around them when they walk down the street in town. So they had some psychic power, I would say.
You don't think they had anything to do with the girls?
Oh, we'll never know.
Killing, do you?
I have my suspicions, but we'll never know.
So, after this little girl was found, were you around, or did you just hear the story?
The girl in the lake that had drowned?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I was around, and I kept following up with the deputy who had done the local body removal and all that, and tagged it.
Did you go up there and try and communicate with her spirit?
I went to the lake, and there was just nothing there. I took pictures and talked to people.
But what about the spirit itself, the little girl? Was she still there?
This is a woman who was like in her early 20s, and no, my feeling was that she was dead before she was in the lake.
So you weren't able to connect with her spirit at all?
But it was sad, and then right after that, because I kept bugging the people in the cabin, just trying to get evidence, do you remember the girl? Do you remember what she looked like when she left? Did she say where she was going when she left? I mean, we didn't have no evidence to make a case against them. I just wondered if they knew anything, and finally they said, yeah, we do remember something like that about a girl that was here. She was here briefly. And then they got very defensive, and they said, well, stop bugging us. We don't know anything about it. And then, coincidentally, my house started getting haunted after that. I started seeing, disembodied heads floating above my skylight when I'd lie on my back at night on the living room floor. And I'm not the only one who saw these things, but I will say that I tried to ignore it a long, long, long time. And they had a strange resemblance to one or two of the people out at the chapel in the woods.
Now, what about these faces that you were seeing in your house? Yeah,
the faces, they seemed to coincide with people I'd actually met. And so I thought I was getting kind of like psychic attacks, astral psychic attacks, or sending astral bodies, astral doubles, and attacking me. And, I could ignore them. I could just look up and laugh at them and pretend I didn't see them, even though people said, well, there's something up there. I saw them too. I said, well, they're not bothering anybody. Just go away. Who knows what it is. So, but then they started kind of messing with my mind. It's like they would remove things in the house and then replace them. I guess the worst example was I went to bed one night and I woke up early in the morning and I stood up and everything that had been on the floor was now in the dresser. Everything that had been in the dresser drawers was on the floor.
Somebody wanted your attention, obviously.
And I said, I said out loud, I said, this is not going to bother me. And then I went in my bathroom, shaved, brushed my teeth, came out, and everything was back to normal. So,
did you try and communicate?
You think that's funny, do you?
I think it's funny. Did you try and communicate with them and say, what do you guys want? Somebody obviously wanted your attention. Did you try and talk with them?
Yeah.
And
so this is how the conversation went. I went out to see Lewis. I called up the Outlook and I said, is Helen there? He said, oh, no, she's no longer with us. I said, what happened? Well, her family had been ill, and so she left. She was out of state. She was no longer part of the team. So I went out there and talked to Lewis, and I said, you know, that woman you sent out, Helen? He said, yes. Did you find it interesting? And I said, you know, there's a real dark side to all these spirits. And he said, I think that's the lesson you needed to learn. She said, you know, it's just the crack between the worlds, between the dimensions, between the spirit world and the physical world, it is so thin. And if you go out there and you cross this barrier, you know, you can bring things back with you, and you have to be very, very careful.
You're talking
very careful.
So you're talking about time travel right now.
Yeah, there is a relationship here, believe it or not.
Well, ghosts, we all know that ghosts can be anywhere. They can
be anywhere, anytime. Yeah.
Right.
Because they are not governed by the laws of physics and space and time. I mean, really, we shouldn't be either, but we're so hung up on the fact we have a material body that we feel like we are. But anyway, back to Lewis's advice. He said, well, I said, you got to give me something to counteract these people. He said, well, there's just one sure thing. He said, you can push back. I said, are you talking about like a psychic attack or building a bubble around me for protection? And he said, no, I'm going to tell you something that's just so airy-fairy you're going to look at me and laugh, but I want you to listen. He said, there's no stronger force in the universe than love. I said, oh yes, of course. He said, no. He said, these are not just words. He said, I'm telling you something extremely important here. There's no force in the universe more powerful than love. So I said, well, how does that apply here? He said, this is what you do. He said, you clear your mind and you think the most loving thought you can think of, the most pure loving thought you can think, and then you project it toward someone or something. And I said,
okay,
what happens? And he said, what happens is up to them. There's no karma here. It's all up to them, how they deal with it.
Okay.
I did that, and the chapel burned up.
What?
It burned up.
You mean you sent those thoughts to the chapel and it burnt?
Oh, I'm not claiming that I caused the fire, but this was his advice to me.
So, all right. So, what was your reasoning for sending love to that chapel?
The idea was that they probably, if they were good, they would know what to do with it, and this would be very good. If they were not good, they would not know what to do with it. It would baffle them. They couldn't incorporate it. It would cause a system failure, and I think that was the lesson. But that ended the problem of the floating heads. Never saw the floating heads again.
So after that chapel,
showed up dead and with the blood removed, decapitated in the lake again, to my knowledge. The birds were no longer decapitated. This is all.
You mean after that chapel burnt down, all that activity stopped?
Yeah.
Oh my God! They must have had something to do with it. Obviously, where were those ladies when that chapel burnt down?
Well, I don't know. I am not aware of anyone who died in the fire, nor was there ever any, report as to how it caught on fire. They did have a lot of candles, so I suppose they figured that the candles took them down.
Oh, okay.
I'm not going to admit I had any part of this. I was just simply sending love to my neighbors. So,
I want to ask you about that trailer.
Yeah.
That trailer eventually burnt down, right?
It did. Apparently, the spirit that we took out of the trailer was so upset, so angry, and probably couldn't get back in the building. They couldn't figure out how the fire had started. I was there when the fire, the investigator was asking the herbalist, what happened? Did you have the stove on? Were you bringing any candles? Did you have any light shortages in the house? Nothing. She said, we didn't even cook that night. We cooked outside on the campfire out front. Strangely, they never tied up their dog. The dog, who had no name, just called Dog. And the dog died underneath the trailer. It was attached to a chain. Mm. They didn't even know how the chain got there.
You mean they did not put the chain around the dog?
That's what they told me. Now, as a result, they were homeless, and the herbalist, she went up to see Lewis, and then she lived with me for a while, and then she was homeless, and her husband, he freaked out. He couldn't take it anymore. For a while, the police wanted to talk to him, but there were no charges to him. He had nothing to do with it. The daughter, she went to a foster home. It was crazy. It was just crazy. But
well, now, were they ever bothered again about that with that entity?
The entity, not to my knowledge, but I haven't seen them in some time. I only hope that things have gone better for them. I think that the entity was pretty much fixated on that location. So even if the trailer is gone, mm-hmm. People say, have you gone back to see the trailer? I say, I'm never going back there. Never going back there. I think that the spirit that creature would be somewhere around those woods,
Mm-hmm. Now, how far was the trailer from that chapel? Were they in the same proximity?
I'm sorry, would you say that again?
The trailer and the chapel, were they in the same area?
They were both on Mount Hood.
What was the distance between the two?
The distance would have been, as you drive, about half an hour, but as the crow flies, probably 10 minutes, because you go down the mountain, and then you go back up the mountain on another road.
Is there any, do you know of any rituals and satanic rituals that go on in that area?
I have heard of some.
Okay, that might have something to do with it.
Yeah, there were also wonderful things where, the Native Americans would winter where I lived, called Brightwood, and Brightwood was given its name by the Indians, who would spend summers there, and they claimed that the place was alive. I know children who talked to trees. I had a neighbor who wrote children's books under the name, I think it was Omar, and I said, why don't you use your real name when you write these children's books? And he said, oh, I don't write the books, I just write them down. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I introduced you to Omar. And he goes to his house, and we sit down on a log in his front yard, and he said, this is Omar. He says he fell down a few years ago, but he's still telling stories.
Wait a minute.
It's an enchanted place. I heard many enchanted. I heard panpipes up there along the river. I mean, it is a truly enchanted place. I don't know. I don't want to state this, but it is. It's special. It's very wooded. It's old growth trees. The trees are very old. There are spirits there. There are spirits in the trees. There are nature spirits there. I've often thought that the spirit in the trailer was like a gnome. I don't know what it was, to be honest. It was certainly demonic. It wasn't human. But there was at least as many good spirit encounters on Mount Hood as there were negative. I would say far more.
Wow.
But these were enough. This was enough for me. I vowed never to talk about it, think about it, write about it. So when I started writing, this was the last thing I expected to do. It just like popped out of my head. And I was supposed to have written a book called Moving in the Light. So I turned in this book called
Yeah.
So, A Cautionary Tale. And they said, but where's the book Moving in the Light, the sequel to the Time book? And I said, it's coming, but this is different. And they said, well, we didn't know you wrote ghost stories. And I said, well, I don't ever expect to write another. It's a true story of some bad encounters with hauntings that just kind of, I mean, I still encounter ghosts and spirits, and I get along with them as best I can. I try to negotiate with them. Usually you can. You know, if they're fixated on being in a place, I try to negotiate when they're there, or under what conditions, or what part of the house. I mean, I have a house now in St. Paul that is inhabited by a couple of ghosts that I think were probably the original inhabitants back in, well, the turn of the century, 1900, when it was built. They appear in those kind of clothes.
Oh, they don't
really
want to
old
leave.
clothes, but you know.
So you own this
a lot of
house.
things happen
Okay,
in that house.
so Vaughn, did you try and talk to these ghosts to find out who they were?
Oh, the ghosts of the house
Yeah.
in St. Paul?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. They just smile. They don't talk. It's just, you know, they're happy ghosts, you know, and they just smile, and then they look on you when you go to bed. I call them. They come to tuck you in. they kind of freaked me the first time, but I got used to it. My cats thought it was just the greatest. They would come and they would just kind of like look in on you. They'd kind of hover, you know, above you, up the ceiling. And
So when you saw these people,
yeah.
oh my God, I would. You should pull out your voice recorder and try and communicate to these people and find out who are they.
They're happy little ghosts, but they do have one weird thing. They always make one part of this back bedroom wet. And I can never get it dry. I mean, I keep trying to.
Oh, you mean like puddles on the floor? Puddles on.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh my God, there have been other locations where puddles on the floor have been, and I forgot what that meant. Oh, that's very interesting.
I've tried to figure it out. I mean, I took the carpet up and I tried to figure out
No,
what
there's
it was.
a reason for it. There is.
And who knows? There's some ritualistic thing they keep reliving over and over.
No.
I feel sorry for these ghosts, really, because they're living in they're in a time loop, not a good one. They're frozen in time. They're stuck in time. It's like a record that keeps hitting the.
But now wait a minute. Now, Vaughn,
Over.
ghosts can come and go, and they're probably living in that period because they were the happiest.
I think they were happiest. But they don't seem to realize time has moved on. You know,
But they can come and go as
happening in
they
the house.
please. But ghosts can come and go as they please, and that's how they're happy.
Yeah, they're not there all the time. Just, you know, they don't show themselves every day. They show themselves if you're kind of tired or depressed. They'll just come and smile. You know, as I say, tuck you in at night. You know, never scare anybody. I've had people over to the house and I describe them, but they never see them. Because they only visit people when when you're going to sleep. So, yeah, it's quite a colorful house. The band, what's her name, Queen, the English band Queen, lived in that house for 6 months in 1975.
Oh my God, they
had a huge going away block party that went on till like 4 in the morning. And still, the neighbors still talk about it. I mean, I wasn't here then. I was out in the West Coast, but yeah. So I'm trying to get the drummer, when they get off tour, he's verified that they did live there, and now I want him to sign the back of a photograph of the house saying, yes, you know, we live there.
Will you get an autograph of Adam Lambert for me?
But they said that who was their lead singer?
Adam.
Mercury. He wasn't there because he was in California trying to get a contract for the band. This is just a couple years before they hit it big, and they were trying to get a contract contract, and they were touring around trying to hit cities, get discovered, and then one of the members got sick when they were traveling through the Twin Cities here, and they rented this house for 6 months. But Freddie was out.
Yeah, Freddie. He was the lead singer at that time.
Yeah,
but now they have
a contract in California.
Well, now they have Adam Lambert.
Okay.
Freddie's dead. Freddie passed on. I think it was.
Yes, I know. Yeah, I do get the papers here occasionally.
Oh my God! When you go back to that house now, do you go back to that house very often?
Yeah, every day.
Well, why don't you try and contact Freddie? See if he'll communicate with you. See how what he's
Freddie
doing.
was never in that house.
Oh, he never was. Oh, okay.
No, he was never in that house. The rest of them were.
Okay. Oh God. So how do you feel? So are you still ghost hunting?
Well, I'm not ghost hunting, but I do encounter them, from time to time. I encountered one that was living in the rafters of this other house, and they started writing on the top of the chimney, where the chimney goes up. This is the third story. It's an old, Victorian house, over 100 years old. And the top of the chimney, goes through the third floor, and then, of course, it goes into the sky. And the chimney up there, I go up there and I'm cleaning up the room, and it says the order, ORDER. I'm thinking, the order of what? The OTO or what? The order? What is this? It sounds very occult. So that's no good. So I got some sponges and water and soap, and I cleaned it up, and I said, I think it's gone. And the next day it was back, and I scrubbed it, and then I realized it was etched in. It was etched, but it was etched, and it was black, and it was etched. So I chiseled it out.
Oh my God!
And then I actually sat down and I communicated with them, and I spoke softly, verbally, and I said, "Okay, I understand you really like this room," and I said, "You don't seem to bother anybody, but I'm going to have to ask you to go into the rafters, and I'm going to seal the rafters, and you can't go into this part of the room anymore, or any beyond the house. You can only live on the other side of this door in the rafters. If you're quiet and don't cause trouble, that's just fine." And it's been fine forever since, for a long, long time. So I guess that was acceptable. I don't know.
I guess so.
Yeah. But I've noticed that, when you see something ghostly or even a spirit, you can, it's like I discovered one day when I was up in Mount Hood, a native in full regalia. I think he was probably a medicine man. He just popped in into where I was standing in front of me.
Wow.
He looked as shocked as I was, and I said, "This is my house. Leave at once." I said, "Go." And he looked really embarrassed, and he left. I think he was as baffled as I was. Well, that was Brightwood. He wanted to go back to Brightwood, except somebody built a house there. Darn it.
Have you ever been in contact with any spirits that have committed a murder or possibly suicide?
Yeah, suicide. Well, that would be my Seattle ghost. I had just been married. We rented a house in Beacon Hill near the VA hospital, and had a wonderful view. You could go out and sit on the top of the house and look out over the bay. And the woman who showed us the house, she lived on the first floor. She had a couple of little tots, 4 or 5 years old, and just separated from her husband. And she showed us the house, and she was painting the upper apartment where we were. It was actually a triplex, and she was painting our unit the night we came over, and said, to look at it in the dark. And I said, "Why are you painting in the dark?" She said, "The lights burned out." And she said, "It's just the bulb. It just needs new bulbs." And I thought, "You should put new bulbs in." And why is she painting it? And it's like, well, the next day we are actually moving in. We're unloading our things in the front of the house, taking them out of the car. And if we pull up, there's an aid car, an ambulance car, and they're wheeling a body on a stretcher, and it's covered, and the bloody hand falls out, and this woman, she committed suicide the next morning, you know, and it's like, and we would always hear her footsteps, you know, walking downstairs. Now, okay, that's really odd because the kids, you know, the kids were gone. They vacated the house that, you know, immediately when she died. There was nobody in the house. There was nobody downstairs, yet we heard footsteps all the time, pacing. So I go down in the basement, and I'm trying to build a dark room, and it's pretty dark. There's no windows in the back of the basement. But to be sure, you know, there's an enclosure, and I close it, and I put plastic all over the doors, and it can never be any light in this dark room. It's going to be a really good dark room. And, but every time I go to, like, use the dark room, there would be a light that would just, out of nowhere, just shine right on the it was a workbench that I was using to put my trays and, you know, enlarger and all. Where's this light coming from? And then I give up on the dark room and start to take it down, and then when I'm taking it down, there's this guy comes in the basement, and he starts when I come out of the dark room, he's in the process of hauling out one of those old style upright radios, those old radios, with beautiful cabinets, and he said, oh, I'm sorry, he said, I used to live here. My wife and kids, we lived on the first floor. We separated, and it was my hobby to to restore these old radios. He said, "Oh, my wife, how she hated the time, resented the time I spent down here with all these radios." And it kind of made sense to me where the light came from. It was her.
Oh.
But you know, I thought, well, you know, all the footsteps. You know, this is where I came up with this idea. There's this woman. You know, she had no physical body, and yet we could hear her footsteps. So she wanted people to hear her while pacing the floor. You know, she wanted me to hear that.
Did you try and talk to her?
No, I didn't talk to her.
She might have.
I don't talk to all of them. That was actually before I met Helen, and one of the first things I said to Helen when she said, "I do ghost houses," and I said, "What's that?" And she explained what she did. And I said, well, I've seen ghosts before and encountered them, and I mostly just shout at them and then move away. And she said, well, you don't know how to communicate with them. She said, you need to learn how to communicate with them. So I met the woman, the suicide in Seattle was before I met her. So at that point, it didn't occur to me that you'd want to, start up a conversation with a deceased spirit.
Sometimes, because there's not a lot of people that recognize spirit or have that gift to recognize them. And sometimes that's by turn. Usually when they're doing closing doors or walking heavy on a floor or light bulbs going on and off, they want somebody to recognize them. And so that means they want to communicate with somebody.
And that's why Helen was in the business, so to speak. She thought it was extremely important, a great calling for people to help these ghosts move on. And I don't think for a minute that they're soul bound. I mean, I don't know, but it just seems to me, in my training in spiritual science, that our higher life form can never be lost. It ascends. It moves forward. But what's left behind in some of these cases is like your lower personality, and it's some dim memory of who you were. It's the lower part of you that needs to. It doesn't really belong here, And so this would explain why people are able to talk to ghosts and call up ghosts. I'm thinking now of mediums or seances where they try to call on the spirit of someone. Well, the spirit of someone is long moved on. They're doing something else. And in fact, they might have reincarnated for all I know. But there is some vestige of them left, and in fact, there's some vestige of us never leaves because the past and the future and the present all occur simultaneously anyway. We just don't perceive them that way. And I do feel sorry for these ghosts that, suicides and murders and people who die with a lot of guilt and misgivings. They're afraid to move forward. They're afraid to move on, or they're reluctant, or they're confused. Sometimes people die in a state of confusion. I think with an accident, people will die, and they don't really realize what's happened to them. And they need someone to help them. Just a little bit of help goes so far. But as for these other spirits that walk among us, and there must be many of them, they don't all show themselves all the time. But I think it's unsafe to try to deal much with them. And I've taken a lot of heat with this book for that. I know a lot of people think you should go in there and eradicate them. Well, I don't want to end up like that priest in The Exorcist. I just don't like that scenario. I felt,
Well, I think dealing with exorcisms are extremely dangerous. Extremely dangerous. What you would be doing would just trying to communicate with the spirit. And if you have that capability, I don't know if there is. I don't know about the afterlife. I don't know if there is such a thing of sending a person into the light. I really don't know. Because
I think you have to go somewhere, though, because, if we're essentially energy beings that are encapsulated, and we know that there's electromagnetic energy coursing through our bodies as we absorb it and process it and transform it. We are energy beings that happen to be occupying a shell. We're like a turtle with a shell, and you outgrow the shell, and then you move on. So, you cannot destroy energy. So the energy, the divine spark in us, or the life force, or the soul, or the spirit, or whatever you want to call it, the energy that courses through us, that part of us can't really die.
So what do you think happens to us when we die?
Well, what? I'm sorry?
What do you think happens to us when we die?
Can't wait to find out. Can't wait, but I'll have to wait. No, I think that one way or another we evolve spiritually, and maybe evolve is too grandiose. We tend to think of things moving forward and upward and better. But I do not believe, with my study of time at least, that anything you can imagine ever dies. It simply transforms. And everything is energy, and even matter is energy in a latent, stagnant form. It eventually goes back to energy, and we don't know quite how it does that, but it does. And if there's energy in us, then it can't die. It has to transform, and it goes somewhere else. So it goes on to some other great adventure, if you will. It's not going to just like hover around you, lost here forever, shipwrecked in a haunted house. There would be part of you that might, succumb to that, but not all of you.
Vaughn wrote. Let's see. These are your two latest books. The Confessions of a Reluctant Ghost Hunter and 7 Secrets of Time Travel. Are those your two last books?
Yeah.
Right. Why don't we touch a little bit on the 7 Secrets of Time Travel? Okay.
But if anyone's going to the INET's West show the end of this month, I'm happy to announce that the Ghost Book is now a finalist for a National Book Award.
You mean your book?
Yeah, that's never happened to me. And I'm the only one in our vast publishing company that is a finalist for a National Book Award. And there are some really good writers.
You're talking about...
I feel lucky, really lucky.
Wow.
The first people, I just learned this. They called and said, please be to the awards banquet as you are a finalist.
No, that is...
Okay.
Oh my God! Congratulations! And that book can be purchased on Amazon.com.
Yeah.
I'm showing
Yeah,
them.
so I'll be signing out there the last Saturday in June. And then there's going to be champagne in our little Inner Traditions booth on Sunday, the 28th. So,
Oh.
for the champagne.
Well, geez, congratulations. That's really awesome. Wow.
Got me over with the feather. I'm the guy that used to write obituaries for the newspaper or whatever else there was.
So, why don't you talk a little bit about the 7 Secrets of Time Travel?
Okay, so the we tend to think of time as linear, and I think we're starting to outgrow this, and this is good because there is, we are limited by our dimensions, the 3 dimensions we live in, up and down and sideways, and that's it. And they say, like, time could be the 4th dimension. But, we live in just these dimensions, and it's like living in a box, and you can't see what's above you. Or let's say what Ouspensky said. He said, you cannot see who lives in the apartment above you. You cannot see who lives below you. He said, you can only see where you are. So we are, in effect, limited by the fact we live in a 3-dimensional world, and we rely, moreover, on our 5 physical senses. Now, there's more than that. There is more than that. For one thing, in a state of heightened consciousness, you can go beyond the 5 senses and experience heightened awareness, perceptive awareness, where you sense things almost the way a psychic does naturally, if we can draw a parallel, and you can experience things beyond the 3 dimensions. And this is only done through, 2 ways. In the traditional way, you have to travel with light at the speed of light. Now, Einstein then said that's not a problem. If you can travel at the speed of light, you will cease to notice time. If you can go fast in the speed of light, you can actually time travel. How would you do that? It's like,
yeah, how do you time travel?
How do we? Okay, this is the first time. This is the first way that people envision doing this, and I'm going to say just how complicated and difficult it is. If you want to start somewhere, start with the Yoga Sutras. Look at Book 3, The Magic of Yoga. The Samadhi mystics know how to transcend time and space. They know how to go into deep trances. There's also something in yoga. This is one way. The other way is would actually be traveling in a light body. In a light body, you would travel at the speed of light or faster. And we say, how can we do that? Because, we know that physical form, such as our body, cannot travel at the speed of light, or it'll burn up and turn into pure energy. It just does not compute. But if we absorb, process, and transfer light energy all the time in our bodies, that's what keeps us basically alive. So the key there would be to develop your light body, your inner light body, to transcend. But you'd have to transcend outside of your physical form. You can't take your physical form.
Now, does this have anything to do?
Yeah.
Does this have anything to do with astral projection?
Yes, very, very, very similar to astral projection. It's like advanced astral projection.
Okay, so then why don't they just call it astral projection then instead of time travel?
A little more. You're astrally projecting. You're sending you're sending your consciousness forward. Or if you're astral traveling, then you're sending your astral body forward. And I would accept that as a way to time travel. But I think the way the Samadhi mystics, the Native American dreamwalkers have done it, is that they take more of their body. They take their outer planes, 7 planes that in spiritual science, the 7 planes that make us who we are. There's the physical form, the
Okay, so with astral projection, it's like you're
So,
flying into
yeah.
another dimension or whatever. You're like you're not really. Are you on the? Are you? Is your feet on the ground, or are you just like
Yeah.
flying, hovering over?
Well, like remote viewing, you're gonna that would be like astral traveling. But to really do astral travel, let's say flying first class, let's say,
Yeah.
you take more of your energy body than simply your astral body. You take your causal body, you take your mental body, and why? Because you're going to need them. On the mental plane, you're going to need the mental plane. On the causal plane, you're going to need the causal body. So you take these energy bodies that surround us, and you take as many of them as you can take with you. I always say you need three. You need the astral, you need the causal, you need the mental. You can take more, take more. But so that's how when you get there, you seem to have a form, because you have a form. You have the etheric double, and so what you're taking is your full astral body. You're taking your energy body more than simply the astral level. You're taking the energy levels of your being. And every one of these 7 energy levels or planes of our being correspond to the 7 levels of creation.
All right. So what's the difference between astral and time travel?
Astral is that you're going to be peeking in on things more with your consciousness. You can send your consciousness. It's kind of like sending an observer out there. And it would be like remote viewing would be a good example of astral travel. And time travel is where let me explain how the Samadhi mystics in India did it. When they had the big tsunami that hit there a few years ago and just devastated Indonesia and southern India, a lot of the Samadhi mystics were out, and they told the people who were evacuating bodies, they said, do not wake them. They are in the deepest trance. Softly, quietly pick them up and carry them. And they did that, and some of them were out for 3 days. You can go into such a deep meditative trance in Samadhi mysticism that you and so much of you is gone. So much of your conscious awareness of your energy bodies is gone. That really all that's left is the physical shell and this thin little etheric piece that holds you together.
So where can you go? Where can you
go? You can go into the past or the future, because there is no past or future. And I know that sounds hard for some people to believe, but time is not linear; it is looped.
You mean you can go into the future?
And every time, every place you go is now. You remember Pogo? He famously said in the comic, "Everywhere I go, there I am." Everywhere you go is now. Everywhere you go, light strikes you, and at that moment is now.
Okay, so
visualize,
how can you go into the future? Where would you even know where to go?
Yeah, I know, it's tricky. So I've done some workshops to try to regress people, and I call it regress, but I set them up for some exercises where they leave their bodies and they go into the past. That's usually easier, and it's easier if you pick like a point in your life you're visiting yourself. It's because you're drawn to that. It's easy to visualize it. It's easy to.
So if there is an experience,
but it's hard to find the future.
If there's an experience from your past that you just, oh my God, I wish I could relive that, you can do that?
Yeah, what you can do is you can go, and this is the best use of it, this is straight out of Native American spirituality, is my limited understanding would allow. You go back to gain insight of where you've been, to know how you are the way you are now. The same way they would go forward in these great trances, these out-of-body trances, and experience time travel forward into the future to find out, to witness what lies ahead for their people and bring back this insight as well. But you can't really relive your life. I get all these inquiries from people. They want to go back and onto that body and feel it, but you can't be that, because that is one now and this is this now. And you can go there and you can see it and feel it and taste it and anything you want, but you can't interact because you're not physically integrated into that now. You know, so you're going there as, like I like to say, as a witness, as an observer, and you have great observation skills. You're going with great perceptive awareness beyond the five senses, beyond the three dimensions, and you are not hindered by physical laws of time and space. You can just go. You're not limited to the three dimensions and the five senses. So there are people that actually can travel like light beings. These are really the great masters. They can do it, and they will actually appear to have a viable physical presence. I shouldn't use the word physical. They'll be seen. They'll be seen when they're, and the great masters could appear in more than one place at once. You know, because they could be seen somewhere, but because they take so much of themselves when they go. You know, they effect a really wonderful astral double, if you will. But most of us do like the Native American dream walkers, or the Samadhi mystics in the East. They would go into these deep trances, and they would transcend time and space by leaving the body, taking as much of their energy bodies with them as possible. And it's really incredible what you can do. You can actually go and heal yourself.
You can?
In this way. Yeah, the best way I know is to actually create a special, find a place where you can go and you heal yourself. You send energy to yourself from now to then. Like in the past, you go to the past, you observe, you heal yourself then. And you're just basically doing an energy transfer. Because you're traveling in an energy body. You have lots of energy. You have a little to spare. So, I think, I call it jump starting. If you ever had a car with a bad battery, well, you just jump start it. So you go and you just send energy, and I call that the special healing place. And there's a meditation technique I have in the book where you actually set up where you want to go, and you set up a place that feels right to you, and that's where you encounter the you then and the you now meet, and then you heal you.
Oh my God!
So,
now, do you have do you have any documentation on that? Where have you helped anybody do a time travel and heal themselves? Do you have any documentation?
I don't document things. I'm not a scientist.
But I mean, there's stories.
I've done workshops. I've done a lot of workshops, and people have actually experienced this and had profound, successful encounters doing it.
Okay, but
I did a workshop at the Omega Institute in New York a few years back, and we had quite a wide variety of people, from realtors to a movie producer to someone who was a dentist and someone who was a college economics professor. And we all did this. And one guy had lived his life in a Buddhist monastery, and they all did this. And they all, by the end of the session, I could put them in such a deep out of body meditation where they would just leave their body and go, usually somewhere in the past, because that's what's comfortable for people. They would go there. It would be hard to bring them back. It would be really hard to bring them back. They'd be gone a long time.
Well, what would happen if you couldn't? What happened if somebody did a time travel and didn't come back? What happens to them? Is that possible?
I don't know. You're always going to come back because you have a karmic connection to this physical life here, this now. So it's like the old adage: what happens if you leave your body? Well, can you find your way back, and will it be painful?
Mm-hmm.
It's really easy. You just like Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz clipped her heels and she came home. You just think of being back in your body, and you're back in your body. It's that simple.
If you do a time...
And that's the key, actually, to finding places in the past or in the future, is you actually form a picture of where you want to go and what you want to do. You take all the words out of it. You have a blueprint, a map, and you can just find it. It's easy to find yourself somewhere. It's kind of hard to go forward in the future and see things and then bring back observations. Aren't many Nostradamuses in the world?
What if somebody does a time travel and they want to go back in time where they had this special animal that they just adored? Could they bring that animal back with them?
No, you can't bring anything back.
Bring anything back.
Do you remember the movie The Time Travel where he brings the petals from the girl, as evidence? Or then he brings them books from his time. Mm-hmm. I mean, that can never really happen because physical material objects cannot transcend time and space.
Now, so nothing can come back with you. There's no attachments. Nothing can come back with you.
Nope, not according to current science. I don't know how it could be done. I won't say it's impossible, but I don't know of a way. Mm-hmm. Because the thinking is that when material objects travel in time, they turn into pure energy. And the only reason you can leave your body, by the way, is that you're doing it as a light body. I mean, make no mistake, you are traveling at the speed of light or faster because you're going in energy. Your consciousness, your energy bodies that surround you, your physical body, they are pure energy. So that is, light is light, and that's how we time travel. The only part of you that can transcend time and space is your light being, and your light being is encapsulated in your physical body. I mean, it sounds too simplistic, but there it is.
Wow. Awesome. For any ghost hunters that may be watching this show, do you have any advice for them?
I always make them so mad, because I say, you can't trust your recordings because they'll have you hear what you want to hear. They'll appear to only who they want to hear them, and they can sound like your grandmother talking to you, or they can sound like a banshee, And in fact, they have no larynx. They have no feet to stomp. They can't open and close doors like my newspaper ghost that I talked about was always closing these heavy doors. How he does that, I don't know. But it was like they're projecting thoughts, and they don't have the physical form, back to time travel. You don't have the physical form in this realm. They're spirit beings, so they do not have the physical form to open doors, make footsteps, shout out your name, appear on your picture. And yes, they do.
Okay, so then when investigators are using ghost applications, digital voice recorders, and they say your name, so what's that?
Yeah, because the what it is they're reading you, and they know they'll pick up on you, and it's telepathic is what I'm trying to say. And yes, they can actually project things. I mean, I've done spirit photography, and I've encountered spirit phone calls, and it's like, yeah, I mean, this stuff does happen, but there's what I'm trying to say is there's no reliability as to what it is. You don't know who's talking to you, whether it's legitimate. You don't know if they're lying to you. You don't know if you're hearing it right. It's unreliable.
Okay. Well, Vaughn, hey, for the viewers, Vaughn's latest books are Confessions of a Reluctant Ghost Hunter and 7 Secrets of Time Travel. He has many other books, And they're all available on Amazon.com.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
Vaughn, I want to thank you so much for being on the show tonight. It was such a pleasure to meet you and a pleasure to have you on the show. And congratulations to you.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Good night, Vaughn. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Hey everybody, I hope you enjoyed the show. Vaughn Braschler, thank you again so much for being on the show. It was a pleasure. Congratulations to you on your ghost hunting book. And so everybody, thanks for joining me tonight. Everybody behave in the chat room. I haven't seen it. Thank you so much, everyone. You have no idea. I'm soaking wet. Oh, gosh. Do you want me to do some shout-outs? Oh, thanks, Kat. Hey, I see Dave. My buddy showed up. Hey, Dave. Don't forget, give my show a like, and please, any new visitors to the show tonight, if you would please subscribe, I'd appreciate it. Kat has a show, Kat Angel has a show tomorrow night, and we will be advertising for that. Dave has a lot of stuff going on. He's quite busy these days. So we'll be hearing from Dave shortly on what is coming up next for him. Thank you for my mods and everybody. Oh, you guys were naughty? Yeah, Kat's show is tomorrow, and we will be posting for her show. Kat, what time is your show tomorrow? Yes, I'll do shout-outs. Okay, let's see. Gabby Unit, Janet W, Quizzle, Trent, thank you, Trent, Cynthia Starlight, Wolf Height, Royce Hinman, nice to see you back. Sharon Allen, Carrie Eastwick, my Unique Annie, Sweet Annie, Chippateri, Butterfly Kisses, I Whip, hey, nice to see you. Jill Fort, Cat Angel, thanks Cat, Debbie Bass, Para Princess Patricia, I love you guys too. Amanda Merritt, 63B1 Stammet, Mary Dallas, Cynthia Starlight. Oh yeah, I Whip. Spooky Raven, we've been friends for over 9 years. She also has a great show on Tuesday nights, and I advertise. Bleeding oh God, I missed that. Darn it, wait a minute. Bleeding Kansas Paranormal, David Coffin, Joe Moyer, Perga Bugalo, Zozo, Ty B, Sean Hathaway, Janet W. Thanks everybody. You know, we had a ton of people. I don't know if they were in chat. Sharon Allen, Nellie Navarro, Catherine Elaine Brabham, Alexandra Violet, Ginger Simmons. Anybody else want to shout out? Oh God, it's so hot. Hey, Wolf Height, I think you sent me a friend request on Facebook. I remember, I think you sent that to me, but I can't find it anymore, if that was you. Daniel Gomez Velasco. Butterfly Kisses, purr. Was the chat room good tonight? I saw one person I don't think was very nice. That for some reason caught my eye. Maddie D, Country Roads Paranormal TV, that's Dave. Okay, good night everybody. Oh, hey, don't forget, you know what, next Thursday, Archbishop Ron Feo is coming back, and he said, Noreen, he said, you've got to make it viewer discretion. He's going to talk about his exorcism cases, and he said they're vile. It's really bad, and he's willing to talk about them. He's going to tell us what goes on. So I'm really excited about that. That should really be a good show. Lost Zoo, thank you. Cat Show is tomorrow Eastern, 9 Eastern, 8 Central, and 7 Mountain, and 6 Pacific. 6 Pacific, okay. So we had one bad person in chat tonight. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so yeah, thanks, Royce. Thank you. Cynthia, yeah, thank you, everybody. The Latin radio show. Okay, everybody, I'm really burning up. Carl White, anybody else? Good night, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. It was a pleasure to be here with all of you. And I thank you so much for joining me every week and being my friends. And so I'm going to say good night. And I love you all. And thank you so much. Have a wonderful weekend. We're in for a lot of heat. Hopefully this winter will have some rain. And everybody be safe. Have a wonderful weekend. And I love you guys. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for all your support. Good night, everyone. And I'll see a lot of you at Kat's show tomorrow night, okay? Good night, everyone. Thank you so much. I love you. Good night.